Okay, so um,
Okay.
so here are a couple of questions from the chat group. Um, can you get this non-identifying information in states where there is closed adoption?
You know, that is a good question. I have not tried to do that. I believe so. Um, but it may be that every state is different. So I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer for that.
Okay. And Ellen says you look a lot like your mother, your birth mother.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of people say that.
I have a question for you in researching your lines. Is there a certain level of the centimorgans that you sort of disregard nowadays that you don't really delve into?
Yeah, the top people in the field say anything below about, well, some say 15, some say 20 centimorgans that don't bother with those. I got to say there are others that say, you know, they can be useful. So I really don't look at those really low ones, especially in my research for an adoptee, because the amount of work that would have to go into me researching those low centimorgan matches, that means they're related way, 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 way back. And I don't have the time to get into that. I see a question. How did my brother take it at first? My birth mother took the photo album I had made over to him when she told him about me. And she said that actually, as he was thumbing through it, he saw a baby picture I had put in there of myself that reminded him of him. So that kind of helped. Yeah, I mean, it's still just like unbelievable to find out all of a sudden you have a full sibling. So, but he's been very good. In fact, he just texted me just shortly before this started telling me good luck. So we keep in touch.
Okay.
That went a little longer than I anticipated, so I apologize. Should we move on to the next one?
If we have no more questions,
Oh,
move on.
okay. I do see a question from Johnny. So generally, so the question is why is it a bad idea to not just forge ahead with contact? I gave them a heads up that I had found them, and then so in the future, or I have learned to be a little more tactful, a little more general, especially contacting DNA matches, to put out some general information first, get a response, start the back and forth before I get into the nitty-gritty details. It just gives me a better chance of getting a response. Okay. All right. Should I move on to the next one, Chris? Oh.
Lisa, you have a question?
Yes, I just put it in the chat to you, Alyson. My birth son is 21. He knows his birth family, and he's known them since he was about 16. It was a closed adoption, but they wanted contact. And it's very inconsistent. There are immediate family members that are in prison. He's not really interested right now. But in the chat, I just put down what kind of information should I research and save for him, so that later on when he's older, he can look at it and find out more.
I guess what I would do is build a tree for him in whatever program you use, and just attach as many sources as you can. I would go ahead and fill out that tree as much as you can, and just hold on to it till he's ready for it. All right. So I'm going to do the share screen again and go to my second presentation. All right. Okay, so I've got to hang on a second. There we go. Okay. So as I start this PowerPoint, I do want to mention that my client, I call him client, he's not paid, but I don't know what better word to use. Oh, hang on, I'm gonna stop my video because I don't want that going. His name is Ken. He has given me permission to use his name, but he does not want to make this information public. This is just a learning experience for you. So whether you're watching this live, recorded, please do not write down any names or dates. He does not want to go public with this information, and so I have privatized his DNA matches and the people in his tree and whatnot. So please please respect his privacy. I will also remind you that I am a volunteer search angel. I am not a professional genetic genealogist. There actually is no really certification for genetic genealogy yet. That said, I have about 3 years I've been doing this, I have identified 32 birth parents, which resulted in also identifying 43 half siblings and 4 full siblings. I love what I do. It's kind of become intuitive for me. So to have to put this into PowerPoint has been a little difficult because I work on multiple levels at a time, and for your sake, I tried to just focus on one thing at a time. Ken and I met through a mutual friend, and Ken's story is, well, what Ken wanted in getting my help was photos of his birth mother. That was his goal. So let me tell you a little bit about Ken's beginnings. In Chicago, somebody needs to mute a microphone, please. In Chicago, in October of 1942, Ken's, we assume his birth mother, met a woman in a train station and asked her to hold her baby while she went to make a phone call to her husband who was in the Army. That woman never returned, and Ken was abandoned in the LaSalle Street train station in Chicago. He had a little suitcase there with him. His clothes were from a store that was in South Bend, Indiana, across the border. Some of the articles say, well, the mother, we assume it's the mother who left him, she told the women he was 3 weeks old. However, when he was taken to the orphanage, the women there estimated he was more like 6 to 8 weeks old. He was then adopted, and he is now 77, and it's just recently that he's been curious about finding out who his birth parents are. So as I mentioned, you can download your raw DNA data from any of the sites on the left. You can only upload it into the sites on the right. Ken had tested at both Ancestry and 23andMe. So I downloaded his raw data and helped him to upload it into Family Tree DNA, MyHeritage, and GEDmatch to help him find more matches for free. Let's see. I had Ken start a tree for himself in his Ancestry account. If he doesn't do that, if I were to start the tree in my account, then I would never be able to turn ownership rights of that tree over to him. So it's important that I start that my clients start a tree in their own account, and then they share it with me. Again, they make the tree private and unsearchable so that others don't use information in the speculative tree. So he also shared his DNA results with me as a collaborator so I could see and use those to find his family. Now, I understand you're kind of familiar with the Leeds color cluster method. I do a couple things differently. I went ahead and used the centimorgan matches over 400. I wanted to see what lines they led me to. in the colored boxes, you'll see that's information I put in about their trees, how many people are in their trees, or if it's locked, or if they don't have a tree. That's important to me to know to use going back. And then she does the surnames a little differently. I prefer doing it this way, and highlighting in the text in the color of that I've categorized them in. So once I've done this, I actually take it a step further, and I sort it by color group. And that just makes it easier for me to see everybody in one color all together and notice some of the names that are sticking out to me. So as I did that, I noticed these names stick out to me. So this is where I was going to start. Now, I always print out my color cluster chart, and then I make all kinds of notes on it. Next to their names, if I figure out what years they're born, I put it there. If I've been able to put them in the tree, I mark it with a T with a pink pen, so I know that person's in my tree. Just a few things that I like to do. So I have these surnames that I'm going to focus on out of all those matches. So this is a list of Ken's highest matches on Ancestry. Match A, at the time I didn't know, it was her daughter that was managing it. I do now. Match B was managed by a relative. The next match down was match A's daughter, and then another match C. You'll see over on the right that I put the colored dots system that Ancestry has. I made those dots the same color as I did their line on my leads method chart, so I could easily see which family group this was in. Also, let's see. What I ended up doing, oh, hang on, I need to click again. I added a Chrome extension called MedBetterDNA to see the notes I had put in on this match page. So you'll see over on the right, under the Add Edit Groups, you can read some of the notes I have put in. That's because I installed this Chrome extension, MedBetterDNA. And it has some other uses, but for me, this is the main use. I also put a little tree icon in their notes. So at a glance, I can see if I was able to place those people into Ken's tree. So those are some things that you can do. Now match A, she did not have a tree. So I didn't have any surnames to go with that group. So I started building match B's tree. You can see that match B has a nice big tree. I started building her tree, and you'll notice she shares 568 centimorgans with Ken. So I went to this tool called the Shared Centimorgan tool, and I plugged in that 568 centimorgans, and it told me what relationship they possibly were. I'm going to go up to this slide. Now you'll see match B, it says first to second cousin. That's Ancestry's estimated relationship. I always use this tool instead to find out what relationship it could be. And you'll see second cousin down in the 0.57%. So there's not a super high possibility there. So anyway, knowing that she could only be a half first cousin because of her age, I was able to figure out her age or her birth year. Knowing that she was probably only one of these two relationships, I knew that I didn't have to go back too far to find the common ancestor between her and Ken. Now, when we do this live, there is a chart below this that is useful. However, in this case, I prefer this chart. That the other one's a little confusing to me. So if she's a first cousin or first cousin once removed, I only need to go back as far as her grandparent to find the common ancestor that she has with my client. So Keep that in mind. I only needed to go 2 generations back. So what I do to add DNA people to a tree when I don't know how they actually connect is I make what's called a floating branch. So find somebody, and I'll show you how to do this live after, but find somebody on your tree that doesn't have a parent attached to them. So you would click that add father, you would put in the name of your DNA match, and I'm just gonna do it here as a sample. And then once you do that, you're gonna go up and click edit relationships. And then you're gonna click this X to remove what in usually is a DNA match, to remove them from being the parent of the person you just added them to. So you're gonna click remove, and that takes them out, and that creates a separate floating person that you can now create a tree for. I'll go into that a little bit more live when we get there. Okay, when I put a DNA match into a tree, I do several things. First of all, I capitalize their entire name. The reason I do this is when I go up to that tree search button and I click to see a list of everybody in the tree, I know on that list, everybody with a capitalized name is a DNA match. So that's one way to identify them. You'll also see that for the profile image, I used a DNA strand image. I really like to do that. And that way, when you are in portrait view of the tree, you can quickly see that image stick out, and you know that's where your DNA is leading you. Also, and I'll show you this afterwards, when you add a new DNA match to the gallery, go back to one of your old DNA matches and go to their gallery, and then add the new DNA match to this image, and then in that gallery you'll have a list of all your DNA matches very quick. And I'll show you how to do that because that's a little bit confusing description for me to give you. I also tag the DNA tag the person as a DNA match. You'll see that there in the blue. And then I add the centimorgans that they match in the notes column on that person's page. And some people like to put it in the suffix of the name, you know, John Doe Jr. They'll put John Doe 568, but I don't like to mess that up there. So, okay, so I started building a tree in Ancestry, but in Ancestry you can only see so much at one time. So I have a huge whiteboard that I like to chart it out so I can see the big picture. So all the men are in blue, all the women are in pink, all the DNA matches I write in green. If I could not fit, so we have as the common ancestor up here at the top, Jacob Hess and Alice Shelley, and then each line down is to one of their children. I tried to continue that line going down. I'm trying to find all the ancestors of this common couple that Ken and Match B have in common. I'm trying to find all the descendants. So if I can't fit them right under, for example, Stephen, I was able to fit his descendants mostly under that. But say Fred and Cora, you'll see that down below I wrote Fred's other kids, and I wrote them out, and Cora's other kids. So I just try to get everybody I can on this chart. So one thing that you'll notice, two things. Match B, like I said, I only needed to go back to her grandfather. So her father is Fred, her grandfather is Jacob. That's as far back as I need to go. But now look at Match C. She is a descendant of Jacob's daughter, Margaret. She's further down in generations, but she's got a higher centimorgan number than some of the other people that are up closer in generations to Jacob. So that is the line that interests me, okay? I'm gonna focus on that line. I go in and I put in how many centimorgans that Match C had. She had 319 centimorgans. I find she was born about 1960. Ken was born 1942. So I know they're about a generation apart. So I'm thinking they're probably first cousins once removed. I'm just gonna tuck that in my notes and in my memory and move on to a different color group from the Leeds color cluster method. So now I move to the yellow group, the Sewell Mitrot group. This is the one, match A, that she belonged to, but she did not have a tree. So I messaged the manager of match A. I don't message matches often. I try to build their trees with whatever I can find, whether they have one or not, but I just couldn't do it without contacting. So when I do, I am, first of all, get my client's permission to make contact, and then I am very discreet and general in what I have to say. But it led to the manager, the daughter, giving me DNA access to both match A and the daughter herself. While I was waiting for all of that to take place, I built and filled in the tree for my highest yellow match, which was 175 centimorgans. And then all those other yellow people in that yellow group, I added to this tree. And you'll see that this match's great grandfather was a Sewell, and he married a Mitrot. So that was giving me a good lead, and I just stuck everybody else into that tree that I could. Match A's daughter got back to me that match A did not know who her father was, so she gave me their access to their DNA results. And then I used a tool called What Are the Odds? It's at DNApainter.com. I think Chris sent you a link to this. The way this works, and I can show you live if we have time, is you start on the left, which I know is, you start on the left with the oldest and you work your way to the right. So you add children in. You'll see that William had 2 children and they both married Mitrots. So now I have 2 lines that I need to concern myself with and build out. Well, as I start plugging in the DNA matches, which are the ones kind of in the whitish tan boxes, you'll see that the DNA matches to Eva Sewell's line are not as high as the DNA matches to Alex Sewell's line. So I'm really going to focus on Alex's line. The dotted lines in here indicate half relationships. So let's see. So I just plug in as many DNA matches as I can that I know their relationship in this tree. And then what I do is I add hypotheses. You'll see my hypothesis 1 is up there under Eva's tree and it says 0. It's just not possible. This is a probability tree. So then I added another hypothesis as the grandson of Leroy. Mine are the blue hypotheses. Okay, these are places it's saying could match A fit in that spot, be that relationship according to the centimorgan matches. So this tool has the ability to suggest matches for you as well. So I did do that, and their suggested matches are 4, 5, and 6, the ones in gray. So it's saying that match A, Ken's match A, as hypothesis 3, a half sibling, a child of Leroy Sewell, has the score there is 295,208. You'll see my other scores. There's another one that the system suggested, another half sibling. Either way, it's the same. It'd be a half sibling of Leroy's son. So my hypothesis is that match A fits in as a child of Leroy Sewell and another woman besides the woman he was married to. Okay, let me make sure I set everything there. Okay, so then I add, make sure all these people get into the ancestry tree. I check their relationships in the ancestry tree, you know, first cousin once removed or whatever they are, to Ken, to make sure that the probability lines up with the actuality of where they are in that tree. So that's all I could do with the yellow group for now. So then I moved to the red group, which was the name Dickinson. I had a match that she was the only one in that red group that did not have a Dickinson in her tree. And I wanted to see what was going on there. So I messaged her. In the meantime, I built and filled in the tree for the highest match and put all the other Dickinsons that I could find into that tree on Ancestry. The first, that 138 centimorgan match wrote back that she actually had misattributed parentage. Her birth father was in actuality a Dickinson. She gave me his name, his parents' names, and I added her and them to the tree. But I still could not find any connection in this Dickinson tree to the yellow tree or the blue tree, or how they matched. And then we checked for matches on the sites that we had transferred his DNA to, and we got a huge match. Ken matched this person at 927.4 centimorgans. That's a huge match. The estimated
Good God.
The estimated relationship was great nephew or first cousin. And, oh, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. And he had a tree with 10 people in it. So the first thing I do always is go to the shared centimorgan tool to see what relationship could that really be. And I use a subscription people finder site that I could find that this match was born in 1956. His mom was born in 1931. Ken was born in 1942. So these great grandparent and, you know, some of these other ones aren't going to work. The most likely ones are he's either a first cousin to Ken or a half nephew to Ken. Then I went into his tree and I looked, and it was all private except for his mother's name. Greising is her maiden name. Well, you probably did not notice, but on this tree that I had built on my whiteboard, Margaret, she had a daughter, Mary Ann, who match C descended from, but all the other children I had written below, and one of them had married a Greising. So this caught my interest. I built Mr. Greising's tree, didn't have to go back very far, and discovered that his mother was a Dickinson. So I was starting to tie the lines together. So while I was researching this man's tree, I found that he had a first marriage to Miss Schneider and had 3 children by her. That latter child is Match D's mother. And Ken's born in 1942. Greising and Schneider divorced in 1947, and then Mr. Greising married Ms. Hemmerly, a descendant of the Hess line, which I knew was connected to Ken by DNA. So I believe Ken was the product of an affair between these two before they ended up marrying each other. There were strong DNA matches to both the Dickinson and Hess parts of the tree. So the probability that they were half nephew, half uncle would be, it was 99%. And that would make Match D's mom a half sibling to Ken. So I needed to do some more research and see if this was in fact true. So I went back to my what are the odds chart, and I put in that Ken, you'll see my hypothesis 1, Ken is a child of Mr. Greising, a half sibling to Mr. Greising's daughter, and then there's his half nephew match. And then I added other possible hypotheses Could he fit here? Could the great grandmother have had another child and he's a descendant of that instead? And you can see from my hypothesis counts that number one is by far the highest probable placement for Ken in this Greising tree. So now I went over to the Hess tree and I did the same thing with the woman, the Hess descendant, to see what it would show if I put him in as a child of hers. And so again, the white cells are the DNA matches that I was able to identify and put in the tree. I put my hypotheses in. I couldn't find, there was, based on all these white cells in a row, these 4 in a row, there was no way that Ken could be a half sibling or a full sibling of any of those people. So I just put my hypothesis in where I could. It gave me a 7-to-1 that he was indeed, in fact, a child of Hemmerly. Now, these are just all clues. They're not proving anything. They're just clues and kind of directing me. So again, my hypothesis is that Ken's biological parents are Ms. Hemmerly and Mr. Greising. So what I did is I went in and if he's a descendant of Miss Hemmerly, then he's got to be related to other Hemmerly matches further back. And the closest Hemmerly matches that he had were 6 fourth cousins that did indeed match to those Hemmerly ancestors further back. So I was able to confirm that he was a Hemmerly Hess descendant. He was from that line. Now, I could not put either birth parent in Illinois or Indiana near 1942. All of this took place in, their lives took place in Pennsylvania. So for my own self, I did a timeline. And so I looked, Mr. Greising, he was married by the 1930 census in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. First child born in 1926. The 1940 census shows him in Butler, Pennsylvania. The obituary for him in 1968 says he lives in New Jersey for 25 years, which would put him from 1943 on. However, he and his family are in a Florida state census in 1945, and his wife and him are divorced in 1947 in Florida. So no Illinois or Indiana that I can place him in there. Miss Hemmerly was in Butler, Pennsylvania in the 1930 census, and I couldn't find her for sure in the 1940. I found something that may be her. It was missing a lot of information, just not filled out in the census, and otherwise I couldn't find her. So it was a little frustrating that I couldn't link them to the location where Ken ended up. So, and then my other question was, how does this yellow surname group fit in to all this? So I went and looked at to see if there were any Greisings in the matches of, or in the DNA matches trees, and there were none. There were no Greising DNA matches. That's not just that their name was Greising, it meant in their tree. There were no DNA matches that had Greisings in their tree. So now my hypothesis is that Mr. Greising, Ken's birth father, who I believe is Ken's birth father, he himself has misattributed parentage. So now I'm going back to that Sewell-Mytrot tree I had built for match A and trying to figure out where could Ken and his biological father fit in that tree to make it so that all of Ken's DNA matches, his relationship in centimorgans to them matches what the relationship is in the tree. So I go back to my what are the odds, and what I've done here is what are the odds also does it where they can suggest matches. I think I mentioned that before. So I put in some places where I thought he was. So you'll see that from the left, William Sewell has a son, Alex. And I put in, well, could Mr. Greising be a son of Alex? And then Ken is my hypothesis number 10. So what this shows me is that it's very likely that Ken is the child either of Donald Reichert, Mr. Greising, or some other unknown half sibling. Well, we already know for the most part that Mr. Greising is Ken's father. So that's really the only way it could fit. Let's see. Oh, and I could not put, I want to note this because I hadn't noticed this before, but I tried this tree by putting Ken's half nephew match in, and it just based the whole tree, because that relationship, those centimorgans were so high, it based the whole tree off of that. And I didn't want that to outweigh the rest of the DNA matches, so I took him back off. And it still came up that this is the most likely place that Ken and Mr. Greising would fall in this tree. So then I built a timeline for Mr. Sewell and Mr. Greising's mom, Bertha Dickinson. I'm just going to kind of skip over this because I'm going a little long, but just know that Bertha was 16 when she married her husband. And it was only about 4 months later that she probably conceived our Mr. Greising, which is Ken's birth father. And they were all living in the same place at the same time. And so I'm just going to move on from there. Now I want to make sure you understand, as I build these trees, I am not only putting a DNA match in, I'm also verifying it with records. I do a quick tree, so I don't look at every hint or find every record, but what I do find is a record that will establish a relationship, either a parent relationship to my DNA match or to somebody else in their tree, a parent, child, sibling, spouse relationship. I just want to make sure the relationship is accurate before I move on and keep building the tree. So I do have minimal records in most of the tree. However, now I'm focusing on Mr. Greising and Miss Hemmerly, and I try to find every record I can for them to see if it'll get me to where I can feel a little more certain about this. So this is Mr. Greising's World War II draft registration card. You'll see on the right, it was signed in 1940. It says that he lives in Drums, Luzerne, Pennsylvania. And then on the right, excuse me, I see these physical characteristics, and I send this to Ken, and I say, Ken, how does this look? Is this you? Does this describe you? Because I've never met Ken in person. And Ken says, yes, that's me. I weigh a little less, but otherwise everything else is me. And then Ken notices an important thing. On this card, it says that in 1940, Mr. Greising's employer is Reed Murdoch in Chicago, Illinois. Finally, a link to the place where he was abandoned. This building, this Reed Murdoch building, was only 1 mile north of the LaSalle Street station where Ken was abandoned. So I use this charting thing called Lucid Chart to make these charts. I find in this second marriage that Mr. Greising has, they have 2 children who I believe now are Ken's full siblings. And I am at this point 95% sure I have identified Ken's birth parents. The only way I could be more sure is if one of these 2 children were to take a DNA test. I'm right up there. I'm so close. I look on this subscription site, beenverified.com. I got some contact info for the 2 siblings. Ken and I kind of got together and discussed who to try to contact first. And we both agreed the oldest. I thought the oldest just out of respect for her being born first. And Ken thought the woman because of, he felt that her emotions might be more helpful. So he has actually came over to my house for this. We practiced what to say if she answers and what to say if it's a voicemail. And the intent is to identify himself, and the research that I've done and see if she will take a DNA test. And it ends up that he left a message, and in that message, he ended up saying, "I believe I'm your brother." And by the time he got home, she had called him back, and they talk. She refuses to take a DNA test. She's an insurance investigator and is very concerned about privacy. And so she refuses to take a test. And she says that before she'll send any photos, she wants some information detailing how I was able to figure out it was her parents through DNA. Let's see. Here's some things. We're almost done. Here's some things that Ken and I learned in the conversation. This is his sister telling us that her mom had worked for a U.S. arsenal in Charlestown, Indiana, back in 1942. It's 250 miles south of South Bend, where Ken's baby clothing was purchased. And he said, I could almost feel my sister jump through the phone when I mentioned Indiana and the train station in Chicago, and that her dad had worked in Illinois in 1940. She said, it appears that mother did follow dad around the country, first to Indiana area, close to Chicago, then in Florida in the mid-40s. I have a picture of dad on his boat in 1946. Now, this is before the divorce to his first wife. And the name of the boat was a combination of Mr. Greising and Miss Hemmerly's first names. And she said it sounds like they were already very involved. Here's how they met. The sister said, Mom's dad had a prized strawberry farm and his daughters ran a produce stand out front. Dad would visit, now he's 9 years older than she is. Dad would visit and tell Mom, I'd like to meet you someday when you grow up. Now, I don't know how old the mom was at this age, but kind of interesting. As I said, this sister refused to take a DNA test, but she finally said in our phone call, as far as I'm concerned, you're my brother. And Ken had sent her some pictures and she said, you're just the spitting image of our dad. I just know you are. So in the end, and may I add that neither her nor her brother had children, so we could not do any testing there. She also had told Ken that things were not good between her and her brother, a lot of history there, and that she told Ken not to contact the brother or she would not continue a relationship with Ken. So he is very happy to just have a relationship with his sister. He received some photos, which was what he wanted in the first place. This is his birth mother in her 20s. This is his birth parents, probably right about the time they were married in 1947, 48. And this is his birth mother at her 80th birthday and now his full sister. So we were able to identify this. As I said, he does not want to go public with this in any way. But DNA can do amazing things. They're good things like answering, solving, healing, restoring. And you can use the power of DNA and do those things for yourself. And you don't have to be adopted or have misattributed parented. You can break down your brick walls using DNA by looking at the trees of your matches that are further away. Your 4th to 6th cousins are going to get you back to your 3rd to 5th great grandparent range. Scour those trees for leads as to how you might find more family. So let me stop that. I apologize. Let me quit sharing my screen. I apologize. That ended up being a little longer than I anticipated, so I'm sorry. All right, questions, Chris?
Any questions out there? Just an observation from Ellen. She says, I noticed in both of these stories, the mother, father who abandoned or adopted the child get married and have more children. So there's a lot of good research there, right? Or a lot of good clues out there as you still looking for siblings.
All right, anything else in the chat I should address?
Any questions about any of the methods used? Anyone?
No, I'm seeing this from Judith and Laura. So no, fourth to sixth cousins will lead you to your third to fifth great grandparents. So first cousins lead to your grandparents, second cousins lead to first grandparents, third cousins lead to second grandparents, like that. That's how you remember. Okay, Chris, I guess we need to decide if, the Chrome extension was called Med Better DNA. I believe that was one of the links I sent to Chris to send out to you. Hopefully, I think I sent it second. Hopefully he got that one to you.
What I sent as well, yes. Okay, any other questions? Anyone, thank you for being with us today. This adds another arrow in our quiver of DNA research and how we can best use those results to reach out to them. Okay. Alyson, are you able to stop the recording, or do I need to give you control?
Yeah, I can click stop.
Okay. And I will send you